They suck! I hate them! And may the Christian Lord guide my hand against a Roman popery!
And they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
We're on a mission from God.
Entitled, you want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Maybe we should chug on over to Mamby-Pamby land, where maybe we can find some self-confidence for you, you jackwagon!
Coming to you live from his padded cell high atop Bethel Church, the most heralded, the most despised talk show in all of human history. This is the talk show hell hates. This is Pastor Mike Online. And here we are coming to you live from our top secret broadcasting compound here in Festus, Missouri. This is Pastor Mike and I'm online live with you today. Glad to be with you today. Appreciate your forbearance with me on yesterday. It was one of those days. Just one of those days. And you know what I did? Instead of being here, diligent for God's people, I went to sleep on the couch in my office. Can you imagine that? What a bum. But I just was not feeling good yesterday at all. Feeling much better today. I want to say a word of prayer to those living on the East Coast, United States of America, especially in the area of North and South Carolina. Apparently you are going to get smothered, covered, and topped. If you've ever eaten Waffle House, you know what that means. With Hurricane Florence is her name. And I'm looking at some of the maps now. I have some kinfolk that live in the Zebulon, North Carolina area, Raleigh, North Carolina. We have many followers of our ministry in North and South Carolina. I've checked in on one such family, and they said that they are not expected to get the worst of everything, and I'm very, very, very thankful for that. But this certainly is a hurricane to keep your eye on if you're living in that area. I am sure you have already heard the warnings to come out from among her and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and I will receive you. Something that always fascinates me about hurricanes, about the whirlwind, is that God, on two different occasions, as I'm flipping over to the book of Job, on two separate occasions, God said, when he talked to Job, he spoke to Job out of the whirlwind. Where am I going to see this? Yeah, turn right to it. Job 38:1. Let's see. It's somewhere else too. But in Job 38, then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? And then he goes into a long list of things that God does. God has done, and the thing that God does. And there is another place here, and I'm not seeing it right away, but God clearly speaks to Job out of the whirlwind. The whirlwind, of course, is that Fibonacci sequence, the Fibonacci spiral, the ratio that seems to be the signature of God. Everything in the universe, from the smallest of things that we can tell, DNA, to the largest of things, such as galaxies, they all bear that same ratio signature in their spiral. DNA, of course, has two of the Fibonacci numbers in it. And if you're not familiar with that, let me just run through this very quickly. Take two beginning numbers, 0 and 1. If you add them together, of course, you get 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. Now let's take the 1 from our previous set and add it to the number that we just came up with. 1 plus 1 is 2. So let's take the 2 that we just came up with and add the previous number, which is 1, to get 3. Then we back up 1 to go forward. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. 13 plus 8 is 21. 21 is the number of angstroms, a scientific measurement. I don't know what it's based on, but a scientific measurement. The width of the DNA ladder from this side to this side is 21 angstroms. So then the next number in the set would be 21. The previous number would be 13. So 21 plus 13 is 34. So here's what's interesting. DNA 21 angstroms wide, and from the beginning of one helical turn to the beginning of the next helical turn, you have 10 nucleotides in the middle, 10 steps of the ladder, as it were. And in those 10 rungs, the measurement of that is 34 angstroms, 21 and 34. And both of those are Fibonacci sequence numbers. That just fascinates me. And I love people. But sometimes I don't understand atheists when they say that the universe and all of its order is a result of accidents. Things that almost never happened, but happened. And once they happened, they kept happening. These happy accidents taking place. The creation of the first DNA, the creation of the first cell, the creation of all life, the fact that DNA being 21 and 34 angstroms, which is part of the Fibonacci ratio, and then you look at spiral galaxies, and you look at the ratio of that spiral, it is the exact same ratio. Again, from the smallest thing to the largest thing in creation, they all and everything in between bears that same signature. And maybe a simplified answer from an atheist would be, well, that's because it's based upon the laws of physics. Who wrote the laws? And I'm not trying to be childish, but everything that we personally know of and have accounted for in the course of our personal history, everything that has a structure to it, we know that someone created that structure. Tall buildings, houses, manufactured items, whatever, books. There is no book in a library somewhere where the librarian said, you know, it's the funniest thing, we have no idea who wrote this book, where it came from, but we just came in here one day and all of a sudden there was this book on the shelf, already classified in the Dewey Decimal System, and it's the most amazing book we've ever seen. It's like, 1,000 pages, but it had no author. No one wrote this book. It just showed up. Said no librarian ever. Everything that we know by personal experience has an order to it. And everything that has an order to it, we know that someone deliberately, intentionally created that order, created it to be that way. Books don't write themselves. Songs don't just magically appear And if you put a typewriter and 3 billion pieces of paper out into a field, you would not now, nor would you ever in 10 billion years expect that that would turn into a self-written book. We would never think that way. But atheists want you to think that way. And I just don't, I'll be honest with you, I don't understand that thinking. I have just a little side note here. My personal opinion of atheists, and I'm not trying to be derogatory in any way, is willful ignorance. Deliberate, intentional ignorance. In other words, they are ignoring what everybody else would say, that must have had an author, that must have had a creator, that must have had a builder. They deliberately ignore that and say, well, obviously it didn't, because here it is, and we know there's no God. So it all falls back on their assumption there's no God. There's no God, and obviously then that everything in the universe that is came about as a result of events by itself, happy accidents, because there is no God to create it. We know that. And so what they've done is they've based all of the creation and their view of the creation upon something that they cannot prove. They cannot prove that there is no God, just as they would say we cannot prove that there is a God. They cannot prove that there's not one. So everything that they believe in must have just happened by chance, and we are the product of all those chances being pointed in the same direction. But they refuse to believe in God. Now, with some of them, I wouldn't say this with all of them, but with some of them. Maybe it's with some, it's just a matter of pride. But others, I truly believe, are more, their reasons for not believing in God have a lot to do with sensuality rather than sensibility. In the sense, am I making sense? In the sense that if there's no creator and there's no creator's laws, then his commandments I don't have to abide by, and then I can do whatever I want. And I don't have to worry about the consequences of it because God's not going to give me the consequences because I don't believe in God. And so I can be I can be the biggest genius in the world, but my morality be closely related to that of a pack of wild dogs, and I don't have to answer to a God for my lifestyle because I don't believe in that God to answer to. And I truly believe that's why some people choose not to believe in God, is that if they don't believe in him, then they don't have to answer to him for what they did in their life one of these days. I'm not saying that that's true with all of them, but I definitely believe that in the case of some atheists, not having a God is awfully convenient to their lifestyle. But God created the universe, God created star systems, God created DNA, God created the whirlwind, and God speaks out of that whirlwind. And my question is, what is God saying this week to the people of the East Coast? But you pray for them nonetheless, because some of them are going to go through a very, very difficult time. A lot of times with a hurricane, it's not the strong winds that you have to worry about. It is the 1 foot plus of rain falling down in one tiny area, and the streams and the creeks and the small rivers in that area are not meant to handle that much water. And so there's going to be undoubtedly a lot of flooding and a lot of people displaced by their homes, and a lot of people who should be crying out to the Lord. But the sadness of it is many of them will not. Here's what I would have spoken about yesterday had I been here. Oh, I was here. I just didn't feel good yesterday. I want to go to Revelation chapter 8. I heard a rumor, And I've been busy with other things. We have some company in this week to our church, a dear family, friends of ours from Salt Lake City, Utah. And they're visiting here this week. Had a good conversation with him about issues of the law and the Constitution. It was just very good. But anyway, just spending some time with them. So I have not had a chance to verify this, but I have heard that this is about the time on the Jewish calendar for the Feast of Trumpets. Yeah, that one. Boy, wouldn't it blow a gasket if on the resurrection day, when Christ is going to call all of us to be his body, in the translation of the saints, that the trumpet we're going to hear is... That would be cool, wouldn't it? We know this one. Let's go to the starting gate, everybody. Revelation chapter 8. Let's start there. And let's do just a brief Bible survey of the 7 trumpets. Because this is actually one of the first things that I think I ever taught doing the Watchman video broadcast. I did, in fact, one of the first prophecy conferences I ever did was, I think, in the year 2000, 2001. No, it was 2001. I remember it. It was at Liberty Faith Bible Church for Pastor Kelly. And it's the first time he and I had ever, really been acquainted with each other. He took a chance on me coming to his church, hoping I wouldn't destroy his church, and I don't think I did. But we have been great friends ever since, and I went teaching this thing on how I see the Bible as a prophetic word. In other words, the things that I had learned in just the few short years that God had taken me aside and had shown me things from the Bible, the things that I had picked up on about how to understand the Bible as a sure word of prophecy. And then when I started doing the Watchman broadcast in 2009, I basically started in that general area. I made some videos early on about how to understand the Bible as a sure word of prophecy. And if you have been listening to me that long, you'll remember teachings like a sure word of prophecy, the trumpets, the clouds. I'm trying to remember some of the others, but there was about 4 principles that God had shown me from the Word concerning when you're reading the Bible and the words that you're looking at, how can we understand what it is that we're reading in relation to events that are going to happen in the future? So the very first principle that I absolutely vitally important is you have to believe what you're reading. It seems like a very simplistic statement, but in the 21st century, among, I would say at least American churches, there's more doubt and confusion concerning the Bible than there is belief of it. People don't even bring a Bible to church anymore. Why? Various reasons, but part of it is they just don't believe all or parts of it. They've been told, well, the Bible limits God. You don't want God to be limited, do you? Well, no, we don't want God to be limited. So the Bible limits God. I believe God's bigger than the Bible. I actually believe that God is the same size as the Bible, if that makes sense. God's limitless, so let's see the Bible. Yep, limitless. God's everlasting, yet his word is everlasting. God's never wrong. His word is never wrong. God is the most high. Of course, there's nothing higher than the Bible. God is infinitely wise. The word is infinitely wise. In fact, anything that I want to know about God or the universe or Mike Hoggard, I can go to one source, and that one source is going to be right every time. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So, no, I don't believe God's bigger than the Bible. I believe God is the exact same size as the Bible, which is huge. So people just don't believe the Bible anymore. But if you want to understand future events, and I would also throw in here, judge your motivation. Because if the only reason why you want to know future events from the Bible is so that you can put it out on the internet before anybody else does, then you're not pure in heart, and God will not bless that. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Your motives have to be right. I personally have a hunger and a thirst for knowledge, understanding, and wisdom from the Bible. Not for any particular personal gain. It's just like asking me, Pastor, why are you hungry? I need something to eat. I mean, I don't know, but why are you thirsty? Well, I need something to drink, that's why. And just knowing things out of the Bible just gives me a sense of satisfaction. If God can use that knowledge for His glory and His honor, then so be it. But I don't really care. Anything that I come up with, that I put out on the internet, I don't care who gets as long as God gets the credit for it. What do I care who came up with it first? Who cares? Maybe I'm wrong. I've seen things that other people do on the internet, ideas that they've put into their teachings, and I'm going, they got that from me. They had to have. Okay? I don't care. I don't care where they get it from, as long as God gets the glory for it. And so your motives mean something. And if you're like me, you just have a hunger and a thirst for wanting to know things from God's Word, and you'll believe what God said, God will bless that. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things that thou knowest not. It's that simple. If there's something you don't know, and you just, out of your own personal satisfaction, would like to have the answer to it, ask God. He'll give it to you. It's like making sure you have all the pieces to the puzzle. If you're putting a puzzle together and you find out you are 2 pieces short, it's like the whole universe is out of kilter until you find those 2 pieces. And that's how it is with true Bible students, is that just never feel satisfied so long as there's something that we don't know from the Word of God. But it starts with believing what you're reading. Because if you've got it in your head that your Bible is wrong about something, and you don't really believe the words that are in it, that's your first mistake right there. And anything that comes after that is going to be off by that much. Because whatever it is you think in your Bible is a mistake, you're going to try to correct that mistake. And in your quote-unquote correcting of that mistake, everything you build on that correction is as wrong as your correction is. Because you put it on that foundation alone. Like you're reading, well, it says right here, and this verse here, but this verse actually is an error in translation. But when I retranslate it like this, well, then I can add all this other stuff to it. Whereas before, it wasn't there. It wasn't there for a reason. It's because all the stuff you wanted to add to it, God said, it won't work here. So if you're going to believe, you're going to want to know something from the Bible, you got to believe the Bible. You got to trust the source. And if you don't trust the source, then why are you trying to get it from the Bible to begin with? Why don't you just go out on your own and come up with your own stuff? Which some people do anyway. So you believe the Bible. That's a sure word of prophecy. And then various things that you run into in the Bible when it comes to Bible numbers, Bible symbolisms, Bible typology, the language structure of the Bible. Anybody who reads a King James and knows it to any extent knows that there is a consistency in the language from Old to New Testament in the King James Bible. And some would say, well, there's a great difference between the way the Old Testament said things and the way the New Testament. That's because it's in Hebrew and Aramaic, and Greek is an entirely different language, and you'll never know the truth until you know the original Hebrew and know the original Greek. That's not what God said. God said, if any among you speak in an unknown tongue, let it be by two or at the most three, and let one interpret. A singular interpretation of two or three unknown tongues, then it doesn't matter what one person said in one tongue and another person said in another tongue. They were saying the same thing in two different languages, but the interpreter is going to bring it all together in your language, how God wanted you to hear that in your language. That's what they did at Pentecost, right? In their language. They all individually, in their own language, heard the Word of God given to them by the Holy Spirit. So believe the words, believe that they're translated right, and believe that this one translation actually favors God's way rather than steps away from God's way. You'll hear from other people, well, I like to read all the different translations. I like to get them all together. That way I can get a better understanding of what God was really trying to say here. No, you won't. You're going to end up more confused than you ever were, especially if one translation completely disagrees with another translation in the same verse, as is the case in numerous locations between, let's say, the NIV and the King James. But in the King James, you have one solid, consistent interpretation of everything that God said in English. You have it right there. And so you could be reading the Old Testament, you could be reading the New Testament, but the language is the same between them. It's because the do not interpretations belong to God, and they do. So let's look at trumpets. Seeing as how this is the time of the Feast of the Trumpets, what was the purpose of the Feast of Trumpets? What was God foreshadowing with that feast? Because we know that all the feast days, the holy days and the Sabbaths and the new moons, they were all a shadow of better things to come and not the very thing itself. I mean, we know the difference between speaking to a person and speaking to that person's shadow, right? If you are talking to my shadow and you do this all the time, I will at some point get really, perturbed by that and say, would you talk to me? I'm not down there on the floor. I'm right here. Talk to me, the person, not the shadow. And so whether it's a holy day, whether it's a feast day, whether it's a Sabbath or a new moon or some sort of ordinance in the tabernacle, all of those were the shadow, but not the real. The real was in the future. It's in heaven, the spiritual realm, casting its shadow. So it's a foreshadowing of events that was taking place. That's what the Feast of Trumpets was all about. It foreshadowed, therefore it prophesied of a time to come. And I believe the time to come then would begin in Revelation chapter 8. We have the opening of the seventh seal. And he had opened the seventh seal. There was a silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And verse 2, and I saw the seven angels which stood before God, and to them were given seven trumpets. Now, you can picture in your mind, Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie, any of these other famous, Wynton Marsalis, any of these famous trumpet players. You can, picture in your mind a 3-valved trumpet, with the curls in it and everything like that, and the blare and the mouthpiece, and you can picture that. Or you can picture it as like the horn of a ram. If you want, you can have God giving them all a sousaphone. Okay? I used to play sousaphone. Or a trombone, or however you want to picture it. It doesn't matter. They were all trumpets, horns, and doesn't matter how you got it pictured. The idea is 7 angels have been given 7 trumpets, or trumps, or cornets, or horns, or ram's horns, however you want to picture it. But that's what God did, and as they blew the sound from that trumpet, okay, as they blew that sound, once that sound went forth, certain events took place. Here's what they are. In verse 3, another angel came and stood at the altar having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it unto the earth. And there were voices, thunderings, and lightnings, and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. You might have little side notes in your Bible. I have Ezekiel 38:22, Isaiah 2:13. What else? I've got my Bible here that years ago I made a lot of my notes in. And this is how I used to study, and it still is. But before I had Bible search software, I was just operating a lot on memory of other verses. And so I wrote notes in my Bible to go to other places in the Bible, like my own little chain reference Bible. Anyway, hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. In verse 8, the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. Remember what Jesus said about faith. If you have faith as a grain of mustard, you could say to this mountain, "Be gone thence, and be cast into the sea, and it shall be done." Remember when he said that? Look at that verse. The second angel sounded, there was a great mountain burning with fire, was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. Verse 9, the third part of the creatures which were in the sea had life, died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. Are you seeing a pattern here? So far, with the first 2 trumpets, you have, in verse 7, the third part of the trees burn up, and then you have a third part of the sea turning to blood, and a third part of the creatures which were in the sea died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. 1/3 of the trees, 1/3 of the grass, 1/3 of the sea, 1/3 of the ships. And that's like 33% of all the ships, 33% of the ocean, 33% of the trees. There's a pattern here of 1/3. Why is that? I don't know yet. So I'm still studying the scriptures, still searching. Verse 10, the third angel sounded. There fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Nibiru. Didn't say Nibiru, did it? It said wormwood. And here again, the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. There is a liqueur called absinthe that basically is wormwood, and it's a bitter drink, and it is used by some as the equivalent of like an acid trip or hallucinogenic or LSD or ayahuasca. Even tobacco. Some of the shamans down in Central and South America had their own homebrewed version of a tobacco liqueur. And whenever these shamans wanted to get in touch with the spirits of the jungle or the spirits of jungle animals or whatever, they would mix this really, really strong concoction of tobacco, and they would drink it, down it, and all of a sudden just flipped out of their mind. They would be in a trance. It'd be a hallucinogenic trip, and they would be talking to all these different weird serpent spirits that were in the jungles and things like that. But anyway, that's wormwood itself is of course a bitter drink, but is also makes men drunk. It's a hallucinogen. Verse 12, the fourth angel sounded, the third part of the sun. There's another third again. Third part of the sun was smitten. Third part of the moon and third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened. Now, this is where it's getting interesting. Now we're at the fourth trumpet. And we have something that now matches certain other places in the Bible, because it mentions a third part of the stars. Well, we know, Revelation 12, that it's exactly a third part of the angels, a third part of the stars that are fighting in the war against Michael and his angels. They're fighting with the dragon, on the side of the dragon. So is it reasonable to conclude that there could be a connection between the third of the angels that go dark as a result of the fourth angel sounding and the 1/3 of the angels that are evil angels and fight a war in heaven against Michael? I think it's reasonable to think that there is a connection between the two. But I could not stand here at any given distance between now and the day that this event happens and say to you, beyond any doubt whatsoever, that I know 100% what this means and how it's going to work out. I couldn't do that. It's not any flaw in the Bible whatsoever. The flaw is in my limitation to be able to see. I really do believe that as we see these things unfold in front of our very eyes, one of the things there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to be standing in awe over is how literal this Bible really is. We're going to watch these things and we're going to go, did you see that? That is like word for word what the King James Bible said. And we'll be in awe of how literal. I've had even good, decent men tell me, now, Mike, do you not know the difference between symbolism and substance in the Bible? That not everything is to be taken literally. I don't know. I think even though God does speak in parables, I don't see the parables as ever really not being true. I think what God says, he means. And I think he's going to do what he's going to do exactly the way he said he was going to do it. But there's always the crowd that they just, I don't know, I'm not going to call them disbelievers. I wouldn't do that. Not really my place to judge somebody's personal belief. That's between them and God. But they're awfully keen on saying that a lot of things in the Bible are symbolic, which, granted, they are. But they say that and in saying that, they say it can't be literally this way. And I'm of the idea, and this is, I think, what helps us understand the language of the Bible, is that we see the possibility that it's going to happen as literally as the Bible said it was going to happen. I mean, I think a third of the stars are going to fall to the earth. Now, you may not be able to explain that scientifically, but I don't think that's going to stop God from doing exactly what he said. When it comes to things like time prophecies, like 3 days and 30 days and 40 days and 1,000 years, and there's some who just say, well, that's merely symbolic of this. Like 1,000, back in ancient Greek, 1,000 was a huge number at the time, and not many things were numbered in the 1,000, and so the phrase 1,000 literally just meant a huge amount of time. Like we would say, man, I would give $1,000 for that. Well, back then, you were giving some outrageous amount of money that you would never have in a lifetime. That's how you meant it. Well, that may be true how I meant it, but I'm not the one saying it. God is. And when you compare 1,000 to an infinite God, 1,000's nothing. 1,000's not a big number to God. God has 20,000 angels as chariots. So 1,000 of them, it's not a big number to him. If God says 1,000, I think he meant 1,000. If God said the evening and the morning were the fifth day, I think it means the evening and the morning were the fifth day. I think it means exactly that. And so I think as you're reading through the scriptures, I think it's best to understand that it means exactly what it says. Or else then the words of the Bible would be subjective and not objective. Objective meaning that if God said he's going to reign 1,000 years, then you can get a calendar out and mark down the day when the reign's going to be over, because it will be 1,000 years later exactly. That's God's objective, is to do it exactly the way he said it. But if you maintain that much of the Bible is symbolic, then it gets into this whole subjectivity of, well, you say it means this, but I kind of think it means this, and since we're all making stuff up, which one of us is wrong? That's my biggest problem with a lot of scholarship, is it just really makes interpretations of the Bible whatever you feel like it can be. And I don't think the Bible's that way. I think it means exactly what it says and doesn't mean any less or more than that. So, verse 13 of Revelation 8, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels, which are yet to sound. Then we get into Revelation 9. And the remainder of the last three trumpets. And there's a lot here. In verse 1, the fifth angel sounded. Of course, I've done numerous teachings on the number 5. The purpose, I think, of the number 5, how it relates to the translation, the rapture. I look at this star falling from heaven. My personal idea is that this is Lucifer falling from heaven. How art thou fallen from heaven? And the fifth angel sounded. I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? But it says, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So in verse 2, and he opened the bottomless pit. There arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. If you were looking for, if you're going to think you're going to get bored this afternoon, waiting for a hurricane to show up, study furnaces in the Bible, and what they're for. What was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego going to be thrown into? A fiery furnace, heated 7 times hotter. So he's given the key to the bottomless pit. Who has the key right now? Christ does. He's the only one who can shut and no man can open. He's the only one who can open and no man can shut. So he has the key. And the angels that send in the book of Jude and the book of 2 Peter are the ones, I believe, that are locked in here. And so when the star falls having that key, he didn't steal the key. He didn't make a copy of one. It was given to him. Which tells me that God has a reason why it is at this time that he wants this pit opened and these angels are going to come flying out of it. So he has this key and he gives it to the star for a reason. And that is to open up that pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose the smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree. But only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that should be tormented 5 months. See the connections here. We have 5 angels, the fifth trumpet, star falls to the earth. If that's Lucifer, then remember in Isaiah 14 that Lucifer has 5 things on his mind. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation, the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And then, of course, these locusts come out, and for 5 months, they scatter all over the earth. Is it just a coincidence that at the fifth trumpet, the star falls, and this takes place over 5 months? I can't say that it's just I don't believe in coincidences. In other words, 2 random things happening by chance that seem to be connected, but there is no connection. I don't think that. I think it definitely, God is a God of order and a God of patterns. And God does things in order, in numerical order, by ordinance. So, no wonder this happens over 5 months, which so did the days of Noah. From the day that it began to rain and the fountains of the great deep opened up, to the time, the exact day the water stopped rising, was exactly 150 days or 5 months exactly. And on the 151st day, the water goes down an inch, or maybe a foot, I don't know. But it's going down as of the 151st day. So for 5 months, Noah and his family endures the floodwaters rising. For 5 months during the sounding of the 5th trumpet, people are bitten by these monsters that are coming up out of the bottomless pit, these locusts with scorpion stings. And for 5 months, nobody dies. Not one single person on the earth for 5 months. That's never happened. Well, I won't say never. I would say that in the years right after Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden to the day that Cain killed Abel, I'm reasonably sure 5-month periods went by where nobody died. But as the population of the earth increased, it could not be said that there were whole 5-month intervals where nobody on the whole earth ever died during that 5 months. That's unreasonable to think that even now. With what, 7 billion people on the planet? You know that in any given 5-month period, a certain number of people are going to die. That's just how it is. But for some reason, during this 5-month period, verse 5, it was given to them that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. Their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh man. There is a guy on the internet, does YouTube videos, that he deliberately goes around finding some of the most venomous, poisonous, angry insects in the whole world, and he'll deliberately get himself stung by them. And there's some species of wasp and different things like that, certain ants, that are said to be the most painful bites of any species anywhere. And this guy will deliberately allow these things to sting him. All for the YouTube dollar, right? All for the audience. And I don't think it's a put on. I think this guy literally gets himself stung by some of these wasps and things like that, and he screams in agony. You ought to look this stuff up. If you want to get an idea of what man is going to go through for 5 months on this earth, this might be one of those things that helps you, because we get it in our minds that some of the wicked people of this earth, they get to do whatever they want to, and there's no consequences for it. I know some people struggling with this right now. Very, very depressed, very angry, because they feel like some people in this world get to do whatever they want to do and get by with it. And it makes us bitter with a sense of unfairness, like, man, if I even come close to doing what they did, I would be in so much trouble, yet they're doing so many things terrible, and they get by with it. No, they won't. No, they won't. Maybe, just maybe, God will allow you to see the faces of your enemies when, for 5 months, they're going to go through some of the most excruciating agony that human beings can endure. And they will beg God to let them die. And they're not going to die. See, right now, all man wants to do is live forever, right? Let's cheat death. Let's beat death. And I think there's something about this sting that everybody's going to go, oh yeah, oh, give us that sting. Oh, that sting of life. That's what we want. And as soon as they get it, it's an immediate, I want to die, I want to die, I want to die. Okay? For 5 months, the most excruciating, nauseating pain. I hate bee stings, and they don't really bother me that bad. I just don't like them. First they hurt, then they itch forever. But imagine being struck by one of these locusts, and for 5 months, you would hope that at some point your body enduring this much pain would just shut off, because that's what humans do. A human being has limits as to the amount of pain they can tolerate, and then it'll hit such a level is that it just basically shuts their brain off. And they pass out because they just can't emotionally and physically take any more pain. And it just seems like for 5 months, God's going to eliminate that. They're going to go through the most excruciating pain for 5 whole months. Now, as bad as that sounds, what if I were to tell you, if you die without Jesus, then the devil's going to sting you, and for 5 months you'll be screaming in agony, and that's God's punishment. But of course, at the end of 5 months, it's over with, and you don't feel any more after that. Do you know if that was actually the case, that some people would go, well, I'll just keep living the way, 5 months, yeah, I can do the 5 months. Knowing that at the end of 5 months, they would get a relief from that pain and not experience it anymore. And some people, they don't like to think about hell. And especially along the lines of hell being eternal. And at least here on the earth, when they get stung by the scorpion, that it lasts 5 months. And then it's over with. But with the pains and the sorrows of hell, it's everlasting. And it never lets up, never stops. Verse 6, in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So for 5 months, nobody dies. Nobody does. They all want to now. God's not going to let them. The shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. And on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women. Dun, dun, dun. The androgynous gods here. And their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron. I believe this is part of the Iron Kingdom. Breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. I saw something over the weekend. Look this up when you get time. There's a breed of wasp, and I think they're called warrior wasps. And the reason why they call them that is when these wasps are in the hive and they hear like a predator coming or something that may threaten the hive, they take their wings and beat them against their body. All of them, all at once, and in perfect synchronization and in perfect time. So that, and this will freak you out, so that these wasps, when they're in their hive and they have they feel threatened, that they sound like an advancing army marching down the road. And that's meant to frighten off any kind of predator that may threaten their hive. It's all like all of these wasps, if there's 1,000 of them in this hive, then all 1,000 of them beat their wings against their chest at the exact same time to all sound like an advancing army marching down the road. I heard that over the weekend, and I immediately thought of this verse. Because these locusts, they have, remember verse 9, they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. Where did God get the idea for these wasps to sound like an advancing army of men marching down the road? The scorpions that he threw into the pit. And the sound is made with their wings, people. That is awesome. God, you're good. You're awesome. Go find it on YouTube somewhere. Warrior Wasps, I think is what it is. And then you read that verse again. Okay? Because the angels, those spirits in the bottomless pit, they're able to make the sound with their wings of chariots advancing. Oh, I love this stuff. Anyway, verse 10. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them. This is Revelation 9:11, by the way. Yesterday was 9/11. We call it Patriots Day here in America. It is 17 years since the 9/11 attacks on the Pentagon, the World Trade Towers, Flight 93, Pennsylvania. Everybody remembers where they were on that day. I do. Never forget it as long as I live. And when I wrote the book, The Babel Conspiracy, and I made some video teachings on this back 2004, 2005, I was seeing all these 9/11 things in movies. And at the time, I thought that they were like showing some sort of like prophecy about the 9/11 attack that happened September 11, 2001. I have since changed my mind on that. That I think the 9/11 attack in 2001, plus a lot of other things that bears the number 9/11, you see it in movies, you see it in all kinds of things, that they themselves were also part of the symbolism of what is in Revelation 9:11. Because if you start with verse 7 of Revelation 9 and go all the way through verse 11, you start counting the descriptions of these scorpions. There are 11 things that are used to describe these scorpions or these locusts with the scorpion stings in their tail. The 11th of which is they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. If you remember, several years ago, I did a video called The Beast of 9/11. And it was basically a play on Revelation 9:11. The king of the bottomless pit, I believe, is the Antichrist, the beast. They had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Here's what's interesting to me about this verse. Hebrew has 22 letters. Greek has 24 letters. Add those two numbers up. 46. Okay, some of you came up with like 45 or 47 or some kind of nonsense like that. It's 46. And Abaddon and Apollyon both mean destroyer. Now, that's what Shiva is. One of the names, or one of the descriptions of the god Shiva of the Hindu religion is the destroyer. I'm become the destroyer of worlds. And so there at the CERN headquarters is a statue of Shiva surrounded by a ring of fire, a ring of fire. And they say that, the dance of Shiva is like, the quantum particles dancing around or whatever. So your science is actually not based on science. It's actually based on like voodoo religion or something like that. Yeah, that's what it is. But there's 11 things that describe these locusts. And the 11th thing, of course, is their king, Abaddon and Apollyon, the destroyer. And this is all the sounding of the fifth trumpet. Now, verse 12, one woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. The sixth angel sounded. I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels, which are bound in the great river Euphrates. Now, there's a couple interesting things I want to bring out about this. And when I get done with this, depending on how much time we have left today, and then I'll pick this up tomorrow, we're going to look at trumpets in throughout the scriptures and how trumpets were used in stories, typology, things like that, prophecies. And what we're going to do then is we're going to see in those stories the foreshadowing of these events that take place in Revelation 8 and 9 and 10, getting into Revelation 11, because the thing of the seven trumpets actually encompasses chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 11. Let's see here. And then we kind of get into a little parentheses here. All the way to chapter 16 then is when the seventh trumpet is sounded, then the vials of wrath are going to be poured out. So literally we're going from Revelation 8 all the way to Revelation 16 in dealing with the stories and the symbols and the prophecies behind these seven trumpets. But one of the things that I like of this sixth angel, 6 is the number 4. It actually represents a couple of things. We know that it's the day that man and beast were created. We know 6 is the number 4, the beast. We know in Genesis 6, you have the sons of God and the daughters of men, hybridization going on. But you also have this really plainly understood theme of preparation associated with the number 6. Let me give you examples. How many months ahead of Jesus was John the Baptist born? Exactly 6 months. John the Baptist was born. 6 months later, Jesus is born. Why? Because John the Baptist's job was to go and do what? Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Along with the story of the sons of God and daughters of men and the giants in Genesis 6, what other story do you have in Genesis 6? The story of the preparation of the ark. And even Peter used that same phrase when the ark was preparing. The ark was being prepared in Genesis 6. And look in verse 15 of Revelation 9. You had the sixth trumpet. In verse 15, the 4 angels were loose, which were what? Prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year to slay the third part of men. That's why they come out at the sixth trumpet, is because they were prepared for this particular reason. Noah preparing the ark in Genesis chapter 6. John the Baptist preparing the way of the Lord 6 months before the Lord comes. On the sixth day, as you're out collecting manna, what else? Not only you're collecting manna, not only for that particular day, Friday, but what else are you collecting manna for? The Sabbath day. On the Sabbath day, you're not to go out and collect manna. That's doing servile work. And God forbid it. So he said, you want manna for the Sabbath day? I'll give you plenty on the sixth day, but you got to go out and collect it and have it setting by so that you are prepared for the Sabbath day. Because there were some people who, you know how we are, give us free food. We're always going to take more than what we need. Well, what would happen to the manna if you ended up taking more than what you ate in a day's worth? Overnight, it would rot and all of a sudden worms would be in it. God would not allow that to go on past a day. You were not going to eat yesterday's leftover mannas. Wasn't going to happen. God said, you want today's bread? You're going to get it today. You want tomorrow's bread? You're going to have to wait till tomorrow, unless it's the Sabbath day. So then on the sixth day, miraculously, God would allow them to get 2 days worth of manna, so that on the Sabbath day, there was no need for them to go out and gather manna. And maybe I'm wrong on this. You can look this up. But I don't think God was going to let it rain manna on the Sabbath day. People go out looking for it, and it ain't there. Well, it looks like you're fasting today, okay? But anyway, this is number 6 in preparation. When the land was to keep her Sabbaths, God told the Israelites, every 7 years, you let the land rest. The story, part of the history of America is that when men would build farms in early America, some of them would not choose to follow God's plan. This is back before the days of industrial fertilization. And you heard these farmers brag about how many farms they wore out. They would keep planting crops on the same ground over and over again until that ground would not grow a thing. All the nutrients had been wiped out of that ground. And so the purpose of God giving a Sabbath day of rest to the land was so that the land could have rest to rebuild. It would get a year's worth of nutrients back in it so you could use the land again. God said if you wear the land out, you don't have anything. And there was a lot of people in the history of America would come over here, build farms, and wear out farms and have to move someplace else because they wore the land out. Then, came in the day of commercial fertilization, things like that, to where farmers, after they would plow and after they would harvest, they would fertilize their field to get it ready for the next year. So what do we need God's plan for when we have fertilizers now? But anyway, the idea was when they were given the land a Sabbath rest, God would always, as a blessing to them, he would always give them twice as much of a harvest on the 6th year, so that they would gather in way more than they ever did, but they were going to need it because they weren't going to harvest and plow and harvest the 7th year. So God would give them enough to last until the harvest of the 8th year. And that was their preparing for the Sabbath. So now, as to what that means in the whole scope of prophecy, I'm not sure. I just know that one of the meanings of the number 6 is preparation. All right? So you just kind of take that and we'll see where it goes. But these 4 angels They were bound in the great river Euphrates. I have a theory on the great river Euphrates since we're talking about this. Turn to Genesis 2. Hold your place there in Revelation. Genesis chapter 2. And when God teaches us about the 4 rivers that come out of the land of Eden, verse 10 of Genesis 2, and the river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison, that is it, which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone. The name of the second river is Gihon, the same as that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third is the river Hiddekel, that is which goeth toward the east of Assyria. And the 4th river is Euphrates. Now, the 4th river being Euphrates, I think that God is teaching us something that we can't see right now. And that is a river of water that, when I say the word spiritual, I don't mean metaphor symbolically. I mean a river existing in the 4th dimension or the spiritual realm, a real river. And if you look at what it says here, the 6th angel sounded, verse 14, saying to the 6th angel that had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels, 4 principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness, high places, could be, but they're bound in the great river Euphrates. Well, how is it that spirits could be bound in a river of water? I think that all the mythologies about a river that flows along the boundary of hell, some of them called it the river Styx. I think that there is a river. The story, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, Abraham said there was a gulf between where Abraham was and where the rich man was. A gulf, a river of water, an expanse of some kind of spiritual realm water, where these 4 angels were bound up and they were laid in there, and they've been waiting for this time, for the 6th trumpet to sound, so that they could be loosed. Verse 15, the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, 4 things, for to slay the 3rd part of men. Again with the 3rd thing. Let me throw this in, since we're talking some numbers too. A pattern that you see in the Bible of things having 3 parts. Think of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the 3 sons of Noah. 2 of them are blessed, 1 of them is cursed. Shem and Japheth blessed, Ham cursed. Think of 3 crosses at Golgotha. 2 of those men are blessed, Jesus and one of the thieves. The 3rd man on the cross is cursed because he's mocking Jesus, doesn't think he's the Messiah. The other thief says, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus said, this day you'll be with me in paradise. So 2 of them go to paradise, and the other one, I'm sorry. Think of us and our creative being of spirit, soul, and body. Out of those 3, which 2 of them get to go to heaven, and what happens to the 3rd part of us? Spirit and soul are taken up, but our body is cursed. It's not going anywhere. It's going to get burned up when the elements are burned up with a fervent heat. So you just take that and you see it. Think of the three parts of the angels. 2/3 of the angels are blessed, but 1/3 of the angelic realm is cursed. And where do they get sent to? Crashing down to the earth. So there are certain patterns that once you see them, you start seeing them in more than one place in the Bible. The three sons of Noah, the three crosses, the three groups of angels, the three parts to our being. All of that seems to indicate that two parts are blessed, one part is in fact cursed. And I think that's why you're seeing the 1/3 all throughout this, the sounding of the 6 trumpets in Revelation chapter 8. Now verse 16, the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. This is where a lot of prophecy people get the 200 million man army, because apparently 200,000 is 200 million. Now, there are some who say that this 200 million man army is coming from China. And it's the reason why they're building it. Did you know they're building a dam right now in the Euphrates River to dam it up? You know, whether that's even true or not, I don't really care. Because if you think about it, in modern warfare, no one needs to dam up an entire river so that a large army can get from one land to another. We don't need to do that anymore. We have these massively huge troop carriers that can fly thousands of troops in a matter of a few days. Why can't they just fly over the river Euphrates? Why do we have to dam the whole river up? See, some of it, the way the Bible's written now, if you apply it on those terms, it doesn't make sense anymore. I'll throw something else at you too, since today's the day I make Pastor Mike Online up as I go, okay? Study Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38. I want you to notice that Gog, apparently this massive army that everybody says is Russia, because Gog is Russia. Apparently, Russia is going to lose all of their modern warfare tactics and weapons. And they're going to go back to throwing spears and bows and arrows. And using horses. Because if you go back and read Ezekiel 38 and the Gog-Magog prophecies, they're coming in riding on horses and they're throwing spears. Now, no matter what army you have in the world, if an army comes at you riding horses, throwing spears, you just pretty much laugh at them as you mow them all down with your cannons and, your missiles and, large machine guns that are just mowing down hundreds of thousands of people all at once. Nobody in their right mind would launch a massive military action against the nation of Israel using spears. No one would do that. So, which leads some people to say, well, obviously Ezekiel was looking into the future and he didn't know what an AK-47 was. So he just said, it's a spear, maybe? He didn't know what a tank was, so he said, that great iron horse. They're riding on iron horses. I don't believe that. Oh, I believe the Bible. I believe that this army is coming in riding on horses, and they're going to throw spears and bows and arrows. But I don't think they're from this world either. Okay? You just ponder this. You know, Hal Lindsey, when he wrote Late Great Planet Earth, he should have wrote the book called The Late Great Planet Earth. Because the stuff that he made up in this book, when you go look at it, you're going, what was he thinking? You know, like in Revelation 9, Hal Lindsey said that in Revelation 9, the faces of men, the hair of women, well, these are obviously Apache attack helicopters that John is seeing. John, not knowing how to describe an Apache attack helicopter, he sees the face of a man inside the cockpit, and he sees the whirling blades as the hair of women flipping around like that, and he sees fire coming out of their mouth, and these are missiles shooting out the sides of it. And I'm just going, wow! And years ago, I fell for it. Now, Hal Lindsey, what were you? Never mind. He's dead. He is dead wrong. If we're to think that John was writing, seeing something that he had no idea what it was he's seeing, and so he's just going, that looks like a horse, I guess. It's throwing flames out of its. I don't know what that is. Okay, okay, they look like horses, and yeah, they have faces of men, they have hairs of women, and no. I think John wrote exactly what he saw, and I don't think he was seeing Apache attack helicopters, and I don't think he was hearing the sounds of the rotors, and I don't think he was looking at the blade spinning around, and that's a hair of women. I think John saw locusts with scorpion tails, and the faces of men, the hair of women. That's absolutely what I think John saw. John wrote exactly what he saw, and they're not helicopters. Okay? This, again, you might have believed that all your life, but if you actually stop and think about it, would there ever be any army in the world who launches a massive offensive against another nation, riding horses and shooting arrows? Not on your life would they do that. So it leads me to believe that the Bible is literally saying what it's saying, because that is precisely what it's going to happen. But, I mean, think of it this way. A spirit realm bow and arrow would have an unlimited amount of power versus a machine gun. See, we can't shoot ghosts with machine guns, can we? But I'm pretty sure that an angel wielding a sword can kill tens of thousands of men all at once. So, I'm just starting to think now that the Gog-Magog thing of Ezekiel 38 is a lot more than what the Bible prophecy scholars gave it credit for. Okay? But that's just me. And I look at verse 17 of Revelation 9, in this sixth trumpet. I saw the horses in the vision. Really? You mean China's going to come riding in on horses? I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire. That's not symbolic language. That's real talk. And of jacinth and brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions. Do I need a 21st century equivalent to that? Let's see, the horses, they would be like maybe tanks, and the heads of lions would be like, the blast of a cannon, that little fire that comes out of it. It looks like a lion's mane. Hey, yeah, that was it. That's what he was seeing. Yeah. No. They were horses. They were just not from some stable down here in America. They were horses, and they had the heads of lions. These were spirits. These are evil angels. These are devils. These are bad news. And men will not be able to defeat them. Verse 18. Verse 17, I wasn't done. They had the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. It's not a tank. It's not a tank. It's a horse with a lion's head. Verse 18, by these three was the third part of men killed, by the fire, and by the smoke, by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. I just think that the Bible means exactly what the Bible says. And so instead of us trying to jam a 21st century equivalent into that to make it make sense, why don't we change our minds about what it's saying and actually believe what it says, and then understand that a spirit with a sword is far more dangerous than 1,000 men with machine guns who are fighting spirits. Because bullets don't hurt spirits. But spirits with swords can kill thousands of men. It's exactly what I believe. It just makes it work then. It makes it real. It makes it alive. It makes it more than what men possibly could have ever fathomed about their Bible. Verse 19, for their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them do hurt. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. Neither repented they of their murderers, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornications, nor of their thefts. So, after 6 trumpets are sounded, and all of these terrible things unleashed on the earth, and man is obviously at this time given space to repent of his deeds. But instead of repenting, man just continues on in worse deeds. What is God left with next? Not very many choices. What God is forced into, what God must then do, is put an end to all repenting. An end to waiting for the sorrow of man to bring man to his knees, crawling to God, asking God's forgiveness. Those days are over. And now God, very clearly in the Bible, is now going to institute the pouring out of the wrath of Almighty God, which we are not appointed to that wrath. Now, some people who don't like what I and others say about this, they try to make you think that all tribulation is the wrath of God. Therefore, we're not going to be here for any of it. But that's not true. That's not what it says, and it's not true. Man's been given now all of this time to repent, and he won't do it. Therefore, God is now, he's run out of choices, man's run out of probationary time. It's over with. I'm going to start pouring out vials of wrath upon this earth. But there's a couple things I need to do first. And so then we get into Revelation 10. Now, I won't read all of Revelation 10, but We have this angel clothed with a cloud, his face shining like a sun, his feet as two pillars of fire. He has in his hand a little book open. Sounds like Jesus. Sounds like it. When I get to heaven, that's what I'm going to ask. God, was that Jesus? Was that him? I mean, I thought it was. Was I right? Okay. But this angel in verse 6, he's got 1 foot on the ocean, 1 foot on the earth. He's got the book in his hand. Verse 5, the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer. Now, does it mean that at this point, God's going to snap his fingers and the progression of linear time is going to stop? No. And we know that it doesn't mean that because literally, at least after this point, there's 1,000 years worth of the counting of time. So it can't mean the stoppage of all passage of time. It can't mean that. It is a way of saying, time's up, everybody. Time's up. Like that. Time should be no longer, because if you look in verse 7, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The days of the voice of the seventh angel. Apparently, the voice of the seventh angel and that sounding of the seventh trumpet, is it possible, according to that it lasts a series of days instead of just like an instantaneous thing? It says, in the days, plural, of the voice of the seventh angel. How long can a human play a trumpet? A couple hours, maybe? How long can an angel blow a trumpet without having to take a breath? Days. Weeks, years. I mean, who knows? But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, and you can underline this if you want to, or you can write next to that. Mike Hoggart said underline this, but he's a dope. You can write that in your Bible, okay? In the days when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God to be finished. Now, right here is where you could, I really believe this, get you a notepad, a notebook, or if you prefer, use one of your online note takers, Evernote, Microsoft OneNote, or whatever. And copy down Revelation 10:7. In the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished. And then go back and look at all the occurrences of the word mystery or mysteries. There'll be 22 occurrences of the word mystery. 22 is the number for Revelation, and all the mysteries revealed. 5 occurrences, I think, of the word mysteries, which 27 is the number of books in the New Testament. And look at every place the word mystery or mysteries is used. And I think what you're going to be able to see then is the fulfillment of everything that the New Testament said was a mystery, such as, beloved, be not ignorant of this mystery, that blindness in part is happening to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So here's my take on that. Since he used the word mystery here, and I think it's related to Revelation 10:7, then you could make a note that says, mystery of God should be finished. So at the sounding, or in the days of the seventh angel, God is going to restore full sight to the Jews, and the times of the Gentiles are going to be fulfilled at this time. Beloved, be not ignorant of this mystery, that blindness in part has happened unto Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So I think it's very reasonable to say that at the beginning of the sounding of the seventh angel, God's mystery is no longer going to be a mystery to Israel. Instead of Israel being partially blinded, they're going to be fully sighted now. Instead of just reading the Old Testament with a veil over it, the veil is going to be lifted. They're going to have their other eye opened, and now they're going to be able to see two testaments in the Bible, not just one. And because of that, it is going to be revealed to them the one who has been hiding under that veil all along. And it really wasn't Moses. It's Jesus. That's, I think, at the seventh trumpet, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished. And I think on that day, Israel, or a remnant thereof, the veil of the Old Testament is finally going to be lifted. And they're going to believe that Jesus is the one true Lord, Christ, Messiah. Okay? I love that. Also, the very first occurrence of the word mystery and mysteries is in relation to the parable of the seed and the sower. Brethren, unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to them without, it is not given to them. Therefore he spake to them in parables. So the Jews, having heard the parable, they're going, that's a nice story, Uncle Jesus. Tell us another one. Because they to them, like it was a fairy tale. They had no idea what it meant. But I think on that day, the very mysteries that you and I take for granted that we already know, they're going to know it. They're going to believe it. How about this one? This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. What mystery is he talking about? Okay. The husband is Christ. The bride is the church. Therefore think about it. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother. His father is God. His mother is heaven. And shall cleave unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Behold, this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. So the mystery is going to be ended. It's going to be finished at the beginning of the sounding of the seventh trumpet. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. At what trump? The last one. For the trumpet shall sound, the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. And what Paul say it was? It was a mystery. And here, the mystery of God is going to be finished. It's over with. So I would strongly encourage you, write down this verse and then go through all the places. It's only going to be in the New Testament. All the places where the word mystery or mysteries is. And write those verses down and then say to yourself, in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, this event is going to be fulfilled. Okay? If you do that, you'll know why I'm smiling. I'm not smiling because I'm like, I know something you don't know. You're going to smile because it's just like things are going to be so clear to you. Food will taste better, okay? Just do your own study of this. I would love to just take the time right now. Let's go through all the mysteries that are in the New Testament, because I think on this day right here, Revelation 10:7, all of those mysteries are going to be fulfilled right here at this time. But that's essentially what I believe. Let's see here. In Revelation 11. Now, They're questions that I have. As happy as I am about, I think I get Revelation 10:7, I'm unhappy. See? It's a frown. I'm unhappy because I'm not sure what to do with Revelation 11. Because I know that for 3.5 years, the two witnesses are doing their thing, all right? And I don't know how to look at the events of Revelation 11. Is it like a parentheses here where God is saying, and oh, by the way, this is going to happen? I don't know where it fits. But I've seen the charts that others have drawn up, and I don't think their charts fit either. Simply put, I don't think God called me on this earth to draw up charts of exactly where I think all the events should take place. I think that some things I don't know, I'm either content with not knowing them, or I'm asking God, will you show it to me? And God will say, Mike, when I am good and ready to show you and show everybody else, then I'll show you. So I don't know where exactly these 3.5 years of, the testimony of the two witnesses, comes into play here. I don't know that. When I look in verse 15 of chapter 11, this I get. And the seventh angel sounded. But we have a mentioning of that sounding in Revelation 10:7. So there's a whole list, there's a whole group of things here that I'm not sure exactly when they're going to take place. So I'll just leave that up to the Lord, and I'm content with that. I really am. But I know that in the seventh angel sounded, and there were voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Here's what I know for a fact, that as this seventh angel sounds, God is ready at this time to hand over every kingdom that's ever existed on the earth and hand them over to his son, Jesus, and say, Jesus, it is now yours to rule. So could the 3.5 years be, the whole reign of the Antichrist in Revelation 13? Because that's 3.5 years, 42 months. Okay, times and dividing of time. I don't know. I just don't know. But I know that at the seventh angel, when he sounds, that's what initiates the 7 vials of wrath. And I know that we're not going to be here during that pouring out of God's wrath. I know it. We are not appointed unto wrath. So, it's like I say, I'm not sure exactly. When we're going to do this tomorrow. When we go back then and start looking at the stories where trumpets play a significant part, I think we're going to kind of start to put some pieces together of what God is going to do in the days of this sounding of the 7 trumpets of God. First place we'll go to, I'll give you a couple places in advance. We're going to be in Exodus chapter 19. I know that we're going to look at Joshua chapter 6, because in Joshua chapter 6, we have 7 trumpets sounding on the 7th day And then what happens? Babylon is fallen. So we'll just, again, I heard that this is, we're along the times of the Feast of Trumpets that, are prophesied in the Bible. This would be on the Jewish calendar. And I just, I didn't happen to have my Jewish calendar app on my Apple Watch, so I don't know. But I'll try to look into that. But just to consider of it. As we consider the sounding of the seven trumpets, we're going to look back in Bible typology and we're going to see some things. They're going to help us make sense of what we see in the book of Revelation. All right? I love you. You're the reason why we do what we do. We're just a few hours away from our Wednesday night Bible study. Hope that you can join with us tonight as we're streaming live, or you can just come and be part of it here at Bethel Church. Either way, think Bible.